Hi, I'm Guy Lawrence, and you are listening to the Guy Lawrence podcast. If you're enjoying this content and you want to find out more and join me and come further down the rabbit hole, make sure you head back to guylawrence.com.au. Awesome, guys. Enjoy the show. Kai, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here.
I ask everyone, if a stranger stopped you on the street these days and asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
I got asked what I did for a living yesterday, and there's this massive pause because I don't even know where to begin to go with it. So my answer would just be, for a living, I'm just doing me at the moment. Just Kai.
Fair enough. I like to say I do as little as possible for a living, and then I get a really strange look, and I'm like, "Oh, only joking."
Yeah. Depends how much I want to expand and how much time I have. Like if I go with the motivational speaker, there's usually not a lot. But if I'm sort of say stunt woman or survivalist, or I live on my motorbike, like the stories that ensue after that take a little bit more time.
Yeah, for sure. And it's fast. Well, that's why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Your journey is epic and it continues to unfold. And you're no doubt continuing to inspire lots of people. And that is what I'm excited to bring to people today, because you certainly, live life to the fullest from what I can see. So amazing. So what I thought, why don't we start at the beginning? Because we do know you've had many different hats and you continue to explore different hats, which is awesome. But I love taking it back. So maybe let's go back to your teens, where you were at, what you were searching for, and of course when fate intervened and set you on a different trajectory. Let's go from there.
Yeah, when I think of my childhood, it doesn't ever seem anything extraordinary or different. Like I had a little bit of freedom. I grew up in a small country town initially, and you could see everywhere in every direction. So quite often on a weekend, my sister and a group of friends and I would just head off in a certain direction, and I'm sure that mum and dad just followed the dust. So we had a little bit more freedom to adventure, and the school was a little bit more alternative, so we were definitely encouraged to be who we were and do what we wanted to do. My mum and dad were my teachers, so they were the principal and deputy of the school, and mum taught reception to 2 and dad taught 3 to 7. So they were brilliant teachers. I am biased, but they also were really good. So it was a great start to my schooling and great start to life in general. And then I guess, we moved to another town and I had a horse, which brought about another level of freedom. I was never a show jumper. I was always like just out in the scrub, just galloping along and with the wind in my hair and the birds through the trees. So I always reveled in some level of freedom and excitement, I guess. But, I wasn't an incredible athlete and I wasn't an incredible scholar. I just sort of coasted along the middle line until I was 19, really.
Yeah. And then that's when you had the accident.
Yeah, so that's when I had a car accident. So driving down the Adelaide freeway, it used to be way more bendy. They've done some sort of shortcuts now. And I was driving down the freeway. Well, I was a passenger in a car that was speeding down the freeway. And I tried to get the person to stop speeding and they wouldn't listen. They were racing someone who they didn't even know. And the car went out of control around a really tight bend and ended up going headfirst into a concrete post at about 60k an hour. And it almost split the car in half.
Oh, wow.
We're very lucky. The engine was a newer design. I think they're all like it now, but the engine went underneath the car on runners when head-on collision. And so we weren't more injured, but I ended up being the only one injured out of the whole proceedings. It was a really interesting moment because I'm actually delving more into the trauma of that moment now as I explore the journey I'm on. At that moment, it didn't feel like I took a lot on board, but there are a lot of different things that happened in that moment. Time slowed down, and I remember vividly hearing the crunch, and I remember protecting my head because I was worried about head injuries, but then I heard a crack in my back. And, I just remember thinking, well, that's probably not too good.
So then what happened? Obviously the ambulance came, When did they tell you know, with your injuries and what had happened, and what was your kind of thinking and mindset at that moment?
Well, I'm a type of person who doesn't like to worry anyone. So even sitting in the car, I was like, it's okay. I think I've injured my back, but don't worry about it. It's fine. I'm just going to sit here and stay calm. And so no one actually thought I was truly injured, not even the doctors or nurses. When I got in there, I was like, yeah, I heard a crack. I think I've broken a bone in my back. But because I was so calm about it, I didn't let them call mum and dad because I didn't want anyone to worry needlessly until I knew what was going on. But I do still remember the moment the doctor sort of said, yeah, you know, you have broken a bone in your back. And he said, it's in a really good place. And I remember thinking, good on me. If I'm going to break my back, I'm going to do it in the best place, right? So there was no nerve damage, thank goodness. I could still move my lower extremities. And that was my main concern, was obviously nerve damage. And I just sort of said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, you probably won't be physically active for the rest of your life. And it was in that moment, like even just saying those words, I get that gut punch again that I got from him just announcing it just in one sentence. It was like a life sentence. And he was laying down this blueprint for me going from this journey straight on to this huge arc off to the side. Because, you know, I wasn't an amazing athlete, but what if I wanted to be, you know, and I loved playing tennis, and, you know, so it took all these what ifs and just put them into this single, like, no, you know, your life's not ever going to give you any options. This is the path that you're going to have to go down. And he said, you know, you're not going to be able to have children. You won't carry a child to full term. And just, you know, that's sort of the main two that I remember. And
where would someone like that draw those conclusions from? Is it just from what they're seeing every day, or it's a really hard one, you know?
I think what they do is they give you the worst possible case scenario. And that may have happened for somebody that they know with this injury, and that may have been this injury in the past. And, you know, I think they try and give you the worst possible case scenario. So if the worst happens, you can't go back to them and say, well, you said that I'd be physically capable in a year or so. You said I would do this. And I think they try and do that to take the culpability away from it. But what it does do is it programs your mind, you know, and it sets these parameters that a lot of people then follow. And that's the danger of it. You know, that's why I give motivational talks now, is because I've met like 4 or 5 people who've done exactly the same injury. And they said to me, we did what the doctor said. You know, we protected the back. We didn't do exercises. We didn't train, and we're sore and we're constantly in pain as a result. And, you know, and I feel like sometimes the message that needs to be out there is listen, well, always, is just listen to your own body and
To that wisdom. Yeah. So you've been almost like pointed the bone at you, you know, this is where you're at, this is where you're going. What was your mindset leaving that hospital? And was it at first you were buying into it, or were you like, you know what, sod this, I'm not gonna buy into it? Where were you at?
Well, I remember, like, I never cried this whole time except for this moment when he said that, and this tear just sort of went down the side of my cheek. And I think almost immediately I thought, no, like, no way. And mum and dad sort of said I came out of the womb a bit like that, a bit stubborn, and no was the worst thing you could possibly tell me, because I just feel like, oh, really? I mean, so I think that's a red flag to the bull with me, you know, like, I think that it was, I immediately decided that I wasn't going to let that define me, but I didn't know how I wasn't going to let it define me. I just knew that didn't sound like a really good case scenario. And then I was really fortunate. As I said, mum and dad are incredible, and they have very positive attitudes. So I don't think they would have let me go down that path either.
Okay.
They, you know, the first thing mum did was nutrition. And way back then, You know, like people didn't think that nutrition was at all connected to physical healing and health, like not many people. But she immediately got me on stuff like celery, which is good for bone healing, and this and that, you know, like she did a lot of research. And so my nutrition was good. And then I wasn't allowed to watch television more than half an hour a day. So she just made sure I kept my mind active. And, you know, the whole nature stuff that they're now realizing, if patients can see trees, Mum would bring me poppies into my room. And I don't know if you know, but poppies open quite rapidly. So you can almost watch these flowers come out of their little buds. And so I had nature in my room that I could interact with, and my mind got kept busy. And, you know, there was always that attitude that it was up to me to define how I wanted to live from now on.
Okay. And then how does one end up then becoming a Hollywood stunt woman from... like, I'm still trying to build the map in between. So what happened next? Was it like, that's it, I'm gonna, you know, do something radically different, or did it just slowly evolve?
You know, it's a question I ask myself constantly too, like, because there's 2 points to it all. The first one for me is I feel like that near-death experience made me realize that every day is precious.
Yeah.
And I know we say it, and I know we try to do it, and we try to make the most of every moment. But I feel like having it smashed into you on such a visceral level meant that I never wanted to waste a moment. I knew how fragile what we have is. So there was this determination to just live life. And then the second one is kind of Mum's theory around it, where being told that I would be so physically restricted, on some subconscious level, I went, well, I'm going to go the most extreme that I can.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about that one, but I mean, it seems like it could be a good theory. But my journey went, I had an Icelandic friend who climbed, and he knew that climbing, rock climbing, worked every single muscle in your body like swimming. And so he just probably 6 months in came to my bedside, and he would be like, this is the trip we're going to do, and we're going to go climbing, and this is what climbing is, and we're going to go to Tibet. And we sort of planned these whole trips, and he got me mentally ready for it, and then took me out climbing as my back got stronger. And that would be the one thing I would say that really contributed to my healing process on a physical level. You know, climbing does give you a very strong back muscles and all the little muscles in between. So then, instead of finishing my Bachelor of Business Management and becoming a marketing director, I finished my Bachelor of Business Management and became a rock climbing instructor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so moved into the outdoors after, you know, a long time of lying flat on my back and just looking out the window. I decided I never wanted to be indoors again.
I was going to ask you, how long were you laid up for after the accident?
I was probably in bed for about 3 months.
Oh.
And then like 3 years before, I would say I felt no symptoms whatsoever.
Wow. Okay. And then when you started to rock climb, what was your mindset like? Because obviously there must be still an element of caution because you're back, and you know, how do you know where to find your edge, how far to push it, or were you just, it's an interesting dynamic, I think, going to play there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just made sure I stayed below the limit to begin with. So I didn't push where I was going to take big falls. I made sure the rope was kept tight at all times, you know, so I had a bit of support going up until I started to push it. For me, the thing is the difference between good pain and bad pain. And I really got that hammered into me then. Like, people feel pain and they stop. But they don't realize that there's good pain. you know, like the pain of an ice bath and the pain of going to the gym and working the muscles, you know, like there is a pain that allows us to grow, and that's both emotional pains allow us to grow and physical pains allow us to grow. So there are the pains that we learn to work through, but then there is the sharp pain that means we've gone too far. And so, you know, I mean, I think that's definitely all on physical and emotional levels, but the sharp pain I learned to identify, because for a few days afterwards I was weaker as a result. The good pain, I was stronger as a result. So I learned to find that good pain and push that good pain right to the edge and then stop before the bad pain kicked in.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. There's always that growth then from that discomfort, isn't there?
Definitely.
You know, so you clearly, I'm getting the feeling you're clearly somebody that has a sense of freedom, you know, from all the way back to your childhood to even when I met you cruising around on your motorbike, passing through. So you've become a rock climbing instructor. You're overcoming your own, I guess, fears, I would say, and disabilities, or however you want to look at it. And you know, you're growing in strength and stature. You're probably loving life. And then, what was the next step? Because I'm thinking as well. You mentioned something earlier. You don't know how you're going to do it. You just knew. Mm-hmm. Because it reminds me of a podcast I did with Alan Pease, who's an amazing, phenomenal public speaker. And he's like, you got to forget about the how. Just start and the how will appear.
Yeah.
And clearly you're living by this 100%. So, yeah. So what happened next from the rock climbing to end up in Hollywood then?
Well, I became an instructor and a guide, and I worked for about 4 or 5 years, taking people into the outdoors. And finally, just this one moment that I didn't realize how much it stuck with me, but I was tumbling down some sand dunes, like playing some game I'd made up, and a kid on a school camp just sort of said, "You should be a stunt woman." And this is the moment I refer back to a lot in my life, when I realized that one sentence from someone can change the complete direction of your life in such a dramatic way. Like, I don't know who that kid is. I don't remember his name. I don't think he'd remember saying it, but it just came out of his mouth and it stuck. So this is when I have something that comes into my head to say to someone, even though sometimes it might feel weird or it might be strange, even if it's just one sentence, like, I just make sure I say it, because you never know what hits someone off on different trajectories. And I'm so grateful for that blasé comment for that kid. So I decided to become a stunt woman, and I had no clue how to do that. I knew that there were films being made in Canada, not so much in Australia at that time, and I knew I could get a Canadian work visa for a year. So I just packed all my bags and headed over to Canada, and there was a little climbing community just outside of Vancouver in a place called Squamish. And I bought a van and I sort of made my base Squamish, and then took a deep breath and was like, okay, I've committed. You know, it's kind of like that jumping before you make sure your parachute's on. But I was like, right, I'm here. Now I guess it put an added pressure on me to work harder to make it work, because I'd made such a great commitment to the goal, to the dream.
That's extraordinary. Most people only daydream about making the leap. And most of the time we never do, you know, because we're always in that comfort. When you do something like that and you're all in, are you embracing the feeling, or are you fearful? Like, what's going on?
Well, again, I've had lots of conversations with people about fear, and I would always say I wasn't scared. But I realized I was scared the entire time. I realized that, you know, like, especially stuff with the climbing, you know, people are like, you're fearless. And I'm like, hell no. Like, I had this Nick Cave song in my head that was like, you know, and I'm not afraid to die. Like, all the time in my head, you know, but it was like, I think it was The Mercy Seat by Nick Cave, and it was like just this really dark song about dying, and I would be climbing and I'd have this song in my head. So like I've come to realize that I do feel the fear. I really do. And damn it, Nike, for saying like you do it anyway, but you do. Like it's this choice for me. I can let the fear rule me and live a life less lived, or I can breathe through the fear and do it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You know, like I always give myself that worst case scenario. Like, all right, so I've moved to Canada. What's the worst that's going to happen? In a year, it won't have worked. I'll have to move back home again and I'll have to do something else. But damn it, you know, like I'm not going to wonder for the rest of my life if I could have made it happen. Because that's way worse than trying and failing in my book.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's great to hear, because I think we can put people on pedestals going, oh, they're invincible, they feel us. But I know, I mean, I've met a lot of great people, especially via the podcast, and people you put on pedestals and go, oh my God, they seem untouchable. But they're just normal people do. But the difference is they move through it, and they feel it anyway and move through, right?
Yeah. I have a tattoo saying, I'm not afraid, I was born to do this. And everybody thinks that I got it from stunts, but it was for public speaking. It was like every time I would go to get up on stage, I'd be like, what am I doing? Who am I? This is terrifying. What if they don't like me? And it's just, and I probably still get that, you know, and I just take these breaths and I'm like, everything in my life has led up to this moment. So I'm where I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So just do it, you know, like what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, and you'd rather do some crazy stunt and feel more comfortable with that probably than stepping out on the stage, right?
I would rather fall down a flight of stairs or be set on fire. At least have some control over the result of that.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So you're in Canada.
Yeah.
You've joined a rock climbing community,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, I'm fully in. Now what? So now what? What happened?
So then the next step is not being afraid to put your dreams and goals out there. You know, like, again, it's like, what's the worst that can happen is a no. You know, so I learned there are a lot of no's when you're going for big goals. You know, good luck to you if you get a yes. But especially in the Hollywood industry, both as an actor and a stunt performer, is you'll get a lot of no's before you get yeses. So I would just wander around and I would say to anyone, like, I'm going to be a stunt performer. Like, do you know how I could do that? Like, and people just look at you like you're crazy. And why? You know, well, that's just what I want to be. You know, well, how are you going to do it? I don't know. Can you help me? And finally, probably 6 months in, someone at a bar was like, well, that dude over there, like, he's a stunt performer. You should, like, it was a Friday night at a bar, at a climbing bar. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go over and ask him. And I had to really suck it up. Like, I was kind of embarrassed. I didn't know the guy. I'm an extroverted introvert, you know, like, so I can be a part of a crowd, but I'm definitely very shy and I'm better on my own. So to actually go up to another human and be like, hi, I don't know you, but I heard you're a stunt performer and I want to be one, was one of those really tricky moments where you decide your life destiny from that moment. You know, like, okay, am I going to commit to this dream or am I going to just fluff around it? And so I went up to the guy at the bar. I said, look, can I buy you a beer? I heard you're a stunt performer and I'd love to, that's what I want to be. And to his credit, and I will be grateful to him for the rest of my days, he said, all right, well, have a seat. You know, I guess he wanted a free beer. But, and he said to me, like, well, do you have a headshot? And I said, well, what's a headshot? He just like shook his head. He's like, well, what's your skills? And I said, well, I'm a climber. And he's like, and that's it? Mm-hmm. And he sort of, like, you could just see him going, this is never going to happen. But he said, well, these are the things you need. And he broke it down. You need a headshot, you need a resume, you need to either be a fighter or a gymnast. And he said, and here, I'll give you this phone number of this fight trainer. He said, do yourself a favor. He trains stunt performers. If you have any spare cash, give him a call. And so I still have that bit of paper with that phone number on it.
Wow.
Gosh, I'm getting emotional even thinking about it. It was, yeah, it was just that moment in time that connected me with the most beautiful human being who became my mentor. And as I said, I was living in a van. I didn't have a lot of money, so I would chop firewood for $20 an hour, and it cost $20 to go to this guy's fight class. So I'd get in my van and I would drive down to Vancouver twice a week. And I remember walking into the stunt class for the first time, and I didn't have sneakers. I just had hiking boots. And I didn't have a trackie. I just had my like cargo pants that I would climb in. And I walked in and there was all these flash cars, because stunt performers can make a bit of money. And they were all in their Lululemons and their like matching sneakers, and they all looked so beautiful and put together, and they all just turned to me, and I was like almost like turned around and walked out. But the guy that ran the thing, Kirk Jakes, he just took one look at me and realized I was really determined, and he called me into the class and come in and worked with me. And so that began. I knew I couldn't become an Olympic level gymnast at the stage I was going into it, so I became a fighter, and Kirk became my mentor. And when I couldn't afford to pay for classes anymore, he gave me a free punch card, and that went on for like 3 years. And when he saw I wanted to train, he charged a fortune for private lessons, and he gave them to me for free. So I ended up training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Wow.
3 days a week, private lessons, and then 2 with the group, just because he wanted me to succeed. So yeah,
He clearly saw something in you. And have you read the book The Alchemist?
I have, yes.
It reminds me exactly of that, where you just keep leaning in and following your dreams. I mean, during that time when you couldn't afford to pay him, you're turning up training every day. The fact that you had somebody else that was believing in you, is that what kept you going through that time?
Yeah, 100%. Like, because I looked at myself and I looked at these people and I was like, there's just no way, the gap is too big.
Okay.
And I often refer to it, it's your classic thing, but when you look at your goal, you look at the top of the mountain. And having just been to Nepal recently, I know how intimidating that can be now.
Mm-hmm.
You stand at the base, and if you keep looking at the summit, it's going to be impossible. It's too far away. The gap is too big between where you are and where you want to go. But with Kirk, he just kept my focus on the next step. Like, you could be better tomorrow than you are today, but you have to work today to do it. And so he just kept my focus on that, and having that one person that believed in you when you didn't. Were
you having doubts during that time, just thinking I should just give it all up, or was you just all in, or you couldn't go back? Or
I mean, I think it's a fluid thing. I think anytime you have a big goal, it becomes very fluid. I mean, I think you'd had probably to have dragged me back home in chains by the time I had my heels dug in. But there was also this thing, to be honest, I didn't realize what being a stunt performer was. I didn't know it would hurt. And I remember like getting punched in the face accidentally for the first time, just walking in the bathroom and crying and just being like, that really hurt. Like, I don't know if I want this anymore. Like, I thought we missed each other all the time. And I didn't realize if you hit concrete, you really do hit concrete, So there was this actual realization about what committing to being a stunt performer was. But then I got a taste for it. And then it became so real and 100% what I wanted.
wow. So what was Kurt waiting for you to be ready before putting you forward into the first job, or was it like that you had a break and your first job came? What happened?
Well, you don't have an agent as a stunt performer. So one of the things I did to become a stunt performer is I became an extra or a background performer. So I learned how to be on set, and then you would on the days there were action and you were sort of in the background of it, you'd meet the stunt coordinators. So I would introduce myself and I'd be like, hi, I'm Ky. I haven't done stunts, but and then you put a demo together, and I look at my first demo, and again, like, this is where I encourage people, just do it, put it out there. Like, it might be just the worst thing you've ever seen, and like standing there with white sunglasses on and whoa. And looking like maybe you're showing people what you can't do, but people do really admire an effort. And so I put together like a little stunt demo, and it was on VHS at that stage. And I was like, I'd hand it out with my headshot, which again, I was like posed like just ridiculously. And I guess sometimes the stunt coordinators collect these, and one of the stunt coordinators handed in my resume and my headshot to a director who was looking for a woman to be a bride at a wedding for the stunt, and he chose me. So he handed in a selection of 10 headshots, and the guy's like, well, that's the girl I want to be the bride at the wedding. And that was my first stunt job. I had to kiss a complete stranger, like, you may now kiss the bride, and then walk down the aisle, and then someone fell on top of us and killed us. Yeah, so it was just this, but I remember getting it and just crying and laughing and calling mum, and just because I think we all thought at various stages it was an impossible dream.
And how long had it been between the time you left for Canada, from rolling down that hill, to that moment of that first job being a bride?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they say 3 to 5 before you sort of start making money or getting jobs in the stunt industry. Again, that wasn't something I knew. But yeah, 3 years of doing something every single day to move me forward towards that goal. Whether it was something big, whether it was something small, I would make a list every day. Like, these are the things I need to move forward to this goal. If it was a phone call, like calling a stunt coordinator saying, can I help move some mats? Can I come in? Can I volunteer? What can I do? Or sending resumes out, or training every single day, like doing something that moved me forward towards that goal for 3 years. So it was such a, and it felt like I'd made such a huge sacrifice, like I'd moved countries, I'd left my friends, I'd left my family. And still to this day, I look back at the things I missed with my family in order to achieve that goal and dream. But at the end of the day, that was the dream, and that was the sacrifices that I had to make it come true.
Incredible. And then how long were you a stunt woman for?
16 years.
16 years. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's and during that time, I'm guessing you have jobs, and then you have downtime, and then you just sort of maintaining the body, recovering, training, and then and on the cycle goes, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, what people don't understand with stunts is that you don't have an agent, so you're your own representative, and you also only as good as your last job. And so that is in both the way you perform and how fit you are. So if you get injured, then you can't work, and that's just, so you've got to look after this machine. And for me personally, it became almost this disassociation, like the body was something that wasn't completely me, but I had to look after the body. And, you also, as a female, you have to be as skinny as the actresses, but you have to be super strong as well. And then when you go in, you have to do the best possible job you can do, because if you don't, then you might not work again, so it's this constant pressure and battle. But I think I thrive under that kind of pressure, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but I also love to work hard towards something. Like I don't ever really choose the easy path, I don't think.
Yeah. Wow. And would some projects be weeks long or months long, or?
Yeah. So Thor, Marvel's first movie with Thor in it, was 7 months.
Wow.
Yeah, we did 3 months of rehearsals for the fight sequences, even before we got to camera. But then some things are like, you're just a day player, so you'll come in and you'll do like a day here or there. So you definitely have, they call them champagne and water days. You have those times where you're like, oh, I'm working every day, isn't this fantastic? And then there could be like 2 or 3 months before you're working again. So one thing you do kind of see in the industry is this desperation creeps in to make sure that you keep getting jobs and stuff. But I always viewed it like, if I got the job, it was my job. If I didn't get the job, it wasn't meant to be, and that there were other things I had to do.
Yeah. And whose stunt double was you in Thor?
Jamie Alexander. So she was Lady Sif. So you have Thor, and you have his warriors 3, and then there was like this female warrior goddess. And so my goal and dream was to double the lead superhero for the entirety of a big action movie when I started, and Thor put the nail on that one for me.
Wow. So. And can you give us an example of what kind of stunt you would have done in Thor, for instance? Like,
yeah,
what did they get you doing?
I was so lucky because she was the beginning of the female superheroes. Like, now we have Black Widow, and we have Wasp, and we have this, and we have that. We have Wonder Woman, But they didn't ever really have any big action superheroes that were females. So the work that I got to do on that was amazing. Like, I got to fight with all the guys, and then I had some big, like, there was this sequence where all 6 heroes are fighting at the same time, and it was like 100-move fight sequence, and we're all moving it like a dance, and you had to interact with each other at different times in the whole thing. So we all had to be on these beats of making sure that we were there for the other person, but also fighting our characters as well. And like, it was just this beautiful camaraderie too. Like, you did feel like this bunch of companions going off to war or something and working together as a team. And then I got to jump off the 3rd story of a building and land on this destroyer robot, which was a huge jump, and it was a real thrill for me because I loved Indiana Jones growing up. And the guy who doubled Indiana Jones was the one that was telling me what to do. And so when I did this almost impossible jump that no one thought I was going to be able to achieve, and did all these little things in the middle, and I got it in one take, and he comes out and gives me the thumbs up, I'm like, Indiana Jones just gave me the thumbs up. It's like huge highlight. So yeah.
Amazing. What I got to ask you, because if you're doing something that nobody thought you could do, and you've never done it before, and you're obviously pushing your limits constantly, like, how do you come to the conclusion that I've got this, I do this, and because there's got to be there's a leap there, surely, of faith to a degree.
Literal leap.
Yeah.
I think it's just an insane belief that you can do it. And it's a beautiful representation of life too. Like, the moments before you do a stunt is everyone's idea of what happens to them when they approach something that they have anxiety or fear about. So you stand up on top of this building, and you have to jump off. And it's very unnatural, and it's something that creates anxiety. So immediately you have these voices in your head. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Inside Out. It's like a little cartoon where all the emotions are characters. So fear for me is like that. Fear pops up as like, what are you doing? You're about to do something stupid. Like, what if you get hurt? Like, nobody's done it before. The wind's really strong in your face. Like, it's an impossible leap. And so you get this thing in your head that starts telling you all the reasons why you can't do something. And I sort of just listen for a second. It's important to acknowledge that fear. And it's like, okay, I hear you, and I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to be doing this thing anyway, because I've committed to it, and it's my job, and I really want to do it. So what you're doing right now is not helpful. So then I just sort of put it aside, like almost physically move it aside, and start to program the visualization of what it's going to look like when I succeed. So quite often I'll do that when I'm doing public speaking. I'll imagine what it's going to be like once the talk's over and it's successful, and people are coming up and being like, thank you so much for talking, and thank you for that. Or, and I use it in every microsecond of my life, like this idea that soon this will be over, and this is what it will look like if it's successful. So then I just start to do the self talk, the self-belief talk that will diffuse the fear message in my head. And deep breathing's a good one, like just like getting some oxygen in, because when we're scared, we take short, shallow breaths. But just, breathing can help dispel that fight or flight energy that's coming in. So, I mean, that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from, is this fight or flight's kicking in. And we don't know how to deal with it anymore, because it's not like the saber-toothed tiger's coming at us. We're going to run away. That burst of energy dispels that fear. You've dealt with the situation. You've escaped the tiger. And it's like, whew, we don't have any of that. So this fight or flight just builds up in us and makes us more and more anxious. So one way of getting rid of that is just to consciously breathe it out.
Wow. Were there any close calls in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and there were unfortunate incidences too, like I've broken bones, I've done some damage. And yeah, there's definitely been calls that were closer than I would have liked. But that's part of the job. Like I'm also not going to blame anyone else for the decision that made me become the stunt performer. So I'm not going to sit there going, how did I break my shoulder? It's like, I'm a stunt performer. Like this is a calculated risk that I take every time I go to set. So, it happens.
And I urge anyone who's listening to this to go and check out your show reel that you have on your Instagram and website. I was watching something the other day, just checking it out, and the way you've got the actual scene from the movie and then your scene practicing for the stunt.
Yeah.
And the one thing that really shocked me was, and because you watch a movie, you just get escaped and you watch and you go, that's great. But the intensity of the training of what's going on, it felt like you guys were actually trying to kill each other at one point. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was so intense.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether, because I'm watching it, when I watch a movie, you kind of get swept away with it and you don't really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the training and it made it very real. And that blew me away. I was like, wow. Like you really put your body through it all the time.
Yeah, and that is the thing that people don't understand about it, is when they do see like a fancy car hit or something and they're like, oh my gosh, and the actor rolls out and like does the hair and like comes back up again. And it's like, they're amazing. It's like, well, when you do get hit by a car like that, it can hurt, so yes, we know like different methods of dealing with it, and sometimes we can get pads underneath our clothing, and sometimes but I mean, that for me is the thrill of it though. Like I'm putting my body into a position or doing a set of moves or something that could result in injury or harm, and I'm coming out the other side making it look as dramatic as possible, but not actually getting too injured by it. So it's definitely.
Well, was it hard to leave the industry? Like it must have been a huge decision, surely, to step down, or did you just know it was time? Or
Well, I tore my hamstring completely off. That was, the saying you get hamstrung. Well, yes, I did.
wow, that would have been painful.
Yeah, it was. By the time it came off, it wasn't. I slowly tore it off over a series of stunts, and I have it screwed back on now. But the biggest thing for me is like this massive loss of identity. So when you ask me what I did for a living, for years, I was either going to be a stunt performer or I was a stunt performer. And I took such huge pride in that job because it was a lot for me to get to it. So one thing I've really been working on discovering is myself again. Like, so saying, what do you do for a job? And me being able to say, well, me, is just such a huge step, because I really felt such a loss of identity. Okay. And who was I if I wasn't a stunt performer? And was that enough? And was it anything? Was it worthwhile? And so I really, one of the things I like to sort of examine and work with people is like, I feel like a lot of us experience a loss of identity, especially women, especially, if they have had children and then the children grow and then there's this, well, who am I and what where do I go, or even the midlife crisis, or you lose a job, or like there's this such, I feel like especially now more than ever, there's this real feeling of people sort of floating in this loss of identity about where do you go when you're not this anymore. And so, you know, like I know I'm going to have to do one more stunt day at least, just to show me and my body that we recovered from the hamstring injury. I just, I love it. But I also know that in order for me to be the very best version of myself moving forward, I can't beat myself up like that anymore. Mainly the concussions, to be honest. You know, the body could probably take a bit more, but the last concussion I had, it took me a while to start to remember simple words again. And so I just,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and I could have half my life left, and my brain is just too precious to continue to risk.
Yeah. I was going to ask, with such an adrenaline roll of, you know, everything's different and variety. There's, you don't know what's all this excitement and you know, and I think most of us only can dream of having all this excitement coming in, or whatever we do, because, you know, we end up driving the same way to work. We work at the same office, we go to the same coffee shop, we see the same people, and, you know, we get in these ruts and these routines, and not much changes until life forces us to change, right? You know, and so yeah, I guess you might have even answered the question, but how do you then integrate from that, all this going on, to, are you still searching the kind of rush in other areas of your life, or are you kind of come to terms with it and you're exploring different ways of approaching your day?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't know if it was like this addiction to adrenaline, but for me, it was an addiction to doing something new every day. So I think the way I compensate for that is to still do something new every day. And, you know, and I explore that idea by going to a different coffee shop or taking a different route to where I would normally go. Or, as you know, I'm on my motorbike. So most of the time, calling up random people that I might meet on Instagram and saying, hey, let's go for coffee. I remember reading a book, and it has this, it was like a Terry Pratchett sci-fi novel or something, and it said, it was called May You Live in Interesting Times. And it's actually a curse, like it's a Chinese curse. They say to someone, like, because to them, the best place to live in is a smooth time where everything's the same and nothing gets disrupted. But to me, that would be a blessing. And so may you live in interesting times is my idea of how I want to live my life. And I create that every day. I do try and do something new, even if it's as simple as tasting something different, or going a different way, or going out in the garden and looking at a different patch of plants, or Googling something on the internet that I didn't know. Like, I'm a big Googler. I'm always like, let me see what that actually means. So if I can learn something new or do something new, or I still push myself, you know, like every day I try and make myself better than I was yesterday, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, fair enough. I do that actually with the people I work with Let It In. The first 4 weeks, they have to do something different every single day, because change helps create change and gets you more comfortable with being in a bit of an unknown. It's like, ooh, what's, you know, and it can create such a different dynamic just by the way we think.
Definitely.
And the way we action ourselves. Yeah.
And I think we overcomplicate it. Like, I think when someone says do something new every day, we think skydiving or hang gliding, and it's like, well, yes, maybe you can do that on the weekend, but it can be as simple as just choosing to look at something a different way, and that sort of does help begin to make bigger changes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. I'm loving this conversation, Ky. I've got to ask you some questions that I ask everyone on the show. I'm aware of the time of the, and you might have already answered this as well, but I will ask it to you anyway. What's been a low point in your life, but later become a blessing?
Gosh, it's interesting because we did this high-low thing the other day for a timeline. So looking at your life, and you had to put the high points and low points, and I couldn't put any low points down because every single low point has been a high point as well. So I had there was this above the line stuff and below the line stuff, and I couldn't put anything below the line because breaking my back in the car accident was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, the path I was going down was not the path that was destined for me, and I've had just the most incredible life as a result. And tearing my hamstring off, yes, it created this whole void about who am I, but it's made me explore who I am and given me such an incredible sense of self now. And I've had to go through the lowest of the lows to get to the highest of the highs. So, I mean, if I was to put two pins in it, I would probably say the back and the hamstring. But I would never change any of it. You know, I remember being on the phone, hiccuping to mum, I can't do this anymore. And then it's but then, God, I'm glad I did. You know, that's life. And if you can find a way to make the low points into high points more rapidly rather than taking 20 years to look back and go, well, I guess that was a good thing, then life just takes on an incredible lightness to it, I think.
Yeah, beautiful. What does your morning routine look like?
Oh, I'm a crazy strict morning routine person at the moment. For someone who doesn't like routine, I love my morning routine. So, I wake up and I do half an hour of yoga. And then I do some breathing exercises and a bit of meditation. Then I do the Wim Hof breathing. And at the moment I'm doing, it's not ice, but the swimming pool or the ocean down here is freezing at the moment.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I'll get in there for 5 minutes and every day, and my day doesn't feel complete unless I've started with that. And then it will be some kind of training, whether it's body weight exercises, or at the moment I'm just recovering from an injury, so I'm trying to do some running. So I'll do walking and big walks on the beaches and stuff. But my morning is definitely full of action and breathing, and then good food, just to start the day right. The rest then allows the flux of doing some different things.
Yeah, beautiful. But you're always giving time to yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
and I shoot my bow every single day as well.
You shoot your bow?
Yeah, and so I do the bow hunting. And so
of course you do.
And I figure if I want to be killing the animals ethically to be able to eat them, I want to be as good as I can be. So that's my new passion is making sure that I shoot 100 arrows every single day to be the best possible I can when I'm out there hunting.
Wow, amazing. If you could have dinner with anyone tonight, anywhere in the world, from any time frame, who would it be, do you think, and why?
They have to be real?
No.
See, I love Indiana Jones, and I've said that before. I think he would have some great stories, and people who are doing incredible adventures often inspire me to do my own incredible ventures. So I think, he would definitely be up there with someone I'd love to have dinner with.
Wow. Well, yeah, he'd be pretty cool. And last question, is there anything you would like to, or I said not question, but anything you'd like to add of everything we've covered today for our listeners to ponder on?
I mean, I guess I would just say, listen to yourself. Quite often others will put limitations on us without knowing who we are and what we're capable of. So the first thing is, don't let others put their limits onto you. You know what you're capable of, just believe it with a passion. But then the other thing to remember is we also are far more capable of what we believe is possible for us as well. So not only don't let others put limits on you, but really know that whatever you believe you can do, you can actually do way more. So take that extra step, run that extra K, make that extra phone call, go that extra mile, because you won't be disappointed and you'll be able to go far further than you even believe.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's a great place to wrap it up. Well, actually, what projects have you got coming up? Have you got anything exciting set in stone at the moment? Or
Yeah, so I have two top secret shows that I'm about to go work on. So both extreme survival shows. So you'll see them come out, I'm sure, on the Instagram. But I'm very excited. They're both going to be the biggest challenges I've ever had.
wow.
And so I'm excited. I'm listening to that little fear voice come up every now and then. I'm listening to the doubts, and I'm making sure I'm as prepared as I can be, both mentally and physically, and super excited to challenge myself, to prove to myself exactly how far I can go.
Amazing. Well, you're a bloody inspiration, mate. That's awesome. And where can they follow you? Where's the best place to get more of you? Website, Instagram?
Yeah, so I have Facebook every now and then, but usually Instagram at Ky Furneaux, so KY and then FURNEAUX, and then my website's www.kyfurneaux.com. So sort of either of those things. And please reach out, and if anyone out there needs someone to give them some support and some thumbs up, I'm always there. Tell me your story. I love to hear it, and if there's anything I can do to help, I owe Kirk Jakes 3 years of free training, and I can't ever pay him back. So if there's anyone I can help out there, let me know.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing that amazing journey. And just a snapshot. I know it's hard to do it justice in an hour, Ky, but that was brilliant. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on here. It was lovely speaking with you.
Thank you, Ky.